hope you're all staying safe and healthy during this time. As many of you are aware, next week will mark the fourth time MTI and our membership will be participating in the National Black Lives Matter Week of Action in schools. It's been the most challenging couple years in almost everyone's career as educators, not just because of a COVID-19 pandemic that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon, but also because of the emotional racial reckoning our society has collectively endured regarding our history as a nation, as a state, and as a community. Like most things, our societies and systems' racial reckoning has yielded both positive and negative impacts. Positive in that there have been more sustained efforts to address past racial harm, reflecting on our society in the present day, and attempting to make substantial change to minimize or even eliminate racism in our spaces. From discussions led by Carrie Motoviloff and our MTI Centers initiatives, to book studies, to passing systemic changes in your union to make it a more equitable and democratic organization. I'm proud to say we are part of a union moving through our actions and not just our words. On the other hand, we have also seen a rise in white supremacist backlash on not only how we conduct our democracy in the form of voting restrictions and suppression tactics, but also in our education system, in what we discuss and how we discuss topics, especially ones around race. Many of us are working to move in a more truthful way that focuses on impact and the communities most impacted by these discussions, our students, our staff, and our families of color. Yet others seek to not only silence the parts of our past and present that makes them feel uncomfortable, but also seek to penalize and harm those who decide to move with the truth. Madison, MMSD, and MTI are not exempt from this struggle. Of course, we will always take time during Black Lives Matter Week of Action to loudly proclaim and affirm that as educators, we are always committed to not only passing the truth to our children, but to openly wrestle with it when it conflicts with whatever truths or mistruths we were given by our predecessors. And collectively, I'm proud to witness so many of us engaging not just in next week's actions or the month of Black History Month, but also on a continuous basis. Whether that's through our ongoing work through Justified Anger, our faculty reps for equity and diversity pushing for more equitable outcomes in all of our spaces, or our continued financial support for communities of color through groups and initiatives, your union is putting our words into action, not just in the classroom, but in all of our collective spaces in our community. But as part of our next step in our collective journey as committed anti-racist educators, we also need to confront the impact of our union's historical and current actions on people of color, including our own colleagues. This is not a simple discussion. In my years as a faculty rep, vice president, and educator at 2 schools, I've had many group and one-on-one discussions with educators of color, both MTI members and potential members, about our union's complicated history with employees of color. At times, your union has broken down barriers to make your spaces more equitable, but other times, your union has been the barrier. In the past 2 years, staff of color have confided in me harmful instances where MTI members refuse to confront or discuss racist acts in our spaces out of fear of discomforting a predominantly white majority of educators or a predominantly white majority of members' feelings. MTI membership keeping members of color from participating in union discussions or actions at building or union-wide levels. MTI members refusing to consider colleagues of color as equals in schools, or undermining educators of color through whisper campaigns and coded language, doubting their credentials or intelligence, even when colleagues have the same level or even greater levels of experience or education. And MTI members outright refusing sometimes to even talk or engage with our colleagues of color in the hallways, in staff meetings, or in other shared spaces. I unequivocally believe that our colleagues of color have had these experiences, or worse, are currently having these experiences, because honestly, I've experienced all of them myself as your colleague and your union sibling in MMSD. I've even encountered these behaviors in the past 8 months I've had to serve as your president. And while I cannot speak on any person's intent, The impact of the acts cannot be denied or explained away. It is our duty as anti racist educators and union siblings to not just jump to the piece where we enact change, but to reflect and process how we got to this place in the first place. Make no mistake, I must go on my own journey as a Black and Vietnamese man and educator because I cannot deny the internalized racism I carry in myself or how it interacts and intersects with issues around sexism, ableism, homo, and transphobia in my daily life and work. I have made mistakes with students, families, and colleagues in my past that I still reflect on years after the fact. We are all on our journeys, and where we are must be acknowledged, not as a judgment of an individual, but as an honest assessment so we can develop a more clear direction together. Which is why I'm asking that all of us not just use the blessing of next week's Black Lives Matter Week of Action to celebrate and reflect on our work with our Black scholars, our Black families, and our Black colleagues, but to use this time to reflect and engage on our own internal work as a union. For my part, I would like to offer two affinity spaces for our members next Tuesday and next Thursday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. The Tuesday session will be just for MTI members who identify as people of color so they can share their truths, process whatever is going on in their spaces, and speak on how their union can best support them. The Thursday session will be open to all members, regardless of identity, to do the same. We will return and offer these spaces in the months to come, adjusting and improving how your union moves to meet the needs of its membership. If you can't make it next week, that's okay. Part of making steps in our journey is knowing that not all of our steps can or should look the same, nor should they occur at the same time. It might be sharing affinity and your truths with someone you haven't before. It might be having that one-on-one conversation with a colleague about a past or ongoing situation that needs to be discussed, but maybe has been put off due to anxiety or not worrying about saying the right thing or worrying about retribution. It might also be making more space to listen instead of talking and defending whatever happened. However you choose to take that step, I will commit to you as your president of your union that I will do what is best to support you honestly and faithfully. Until next time, solidarity.